$927 in disability a month to $6 million on a laptop. How the heck did I do it? I'm going to tell you now in this episode, and I'm going to give you every number because you deserve to know. $927 a month from Social Security disability. That's what my daughter and I were living on. I gotta pause again, I swear. Fuck. This is shit I was gonna take to the grave. Get it together. It's just every hard thing you've ever dealt with going on social media forever. What could possibly go wrong? It would be much easier if this was a play and about a character instead of fucking real life. Okay. Get a grip. $927 a month. Social Security disability, single mother, body failing. And I'm sitting here right now with 51 staff members across 10 countries, no outside investors, and a 15-year contract for something my attorneys told me had never been done before, and I signed it anyway. Those two realities are the same woman. Today, I'm giving you every number, every jump, and the one moment where I genuinely did not know if this was going to work. There's a specific number in this episode I've never said out loud in this context before, and I think you'll know it when you hear it. So I was lucky. Doesn't sound like I should say I was lucky because it was a really hard time, but I was lucky when I got sick that I was able to move home. Some people have nowhere to go. It was not fun moving home. It was super humbling. I was embarrassed. I couldn't believe I was on Social Security disability for the second time in my life because I worked so hard to get off it the first time, and most people never do. It's hard to get on it. You don't get on it unless there's a reason. And I was on it after my first car accident. And so here I was, another one, really sick, hot mess. And, and I couldn't work anymore when I got so sick. And this was in 2013. And so I'm a single mom. I had to move home with my mom. So I'm lucky there was a place I could go. But it was hard and it was hell. And I don't want to pretend otherwise. Sorry. It's just true. It was really, really awful. So I didn't have to pay the rent and I didn't have to pay the utility bills. Thank you, Mom, for that. I did have to take care of me and my daughter. I bought all the food for the house. I had to take care of everything else. My ex didn't pay for anything. There was no alimony, child support, just none of that stuff was happening. And so $927 a month in California, San Francisco Bay Area, it just doesn't go far. And if you've heard any of my story before, you know I had to fight for my daughter. It was exhausting. And I took it very seriously that I needed to always be able to take care of her, no matter what was going on, no matter how hard it was. And I had already faced a lot of challenges. So I would save money like a squirrel, really, and like bury it in the backyard or put it under the bed whenever I could because I was so scared. You know, some of this was an irrational fear, you know, and it was because it was actively being manipulated by Bob, who knew what he was doing and he was good at it. But those were things I figured out in hindsight. At the time, I was just freaked out. All I cared about was taking care of her. And so when I was going through this, I, was that $927 a month didn't cover everything. And so I had to peel away a little bit of money that I'd saved and a little bit of money that I had saved. And that's how we were surviving it. So my only job, number one, was to take care of her. And number two was to figure out why the heck was I sick and not getting better, and try to return to the land of the living. So that's what I was working on. And it was 3 long years. Now, what happened at the end of it is my mom moved out and she had to sell the house. That was her retirement. Okay. So she had a space for us, but now she had to move. The new place she went There was no space for us. And we had to get out, and there was nowhere to go. And that was really scary. And that's sort of where this part of the story starts. I had signed a lease. I had decided to re-enter the land of the living and to peel off all the black and being invisible. And I was absolutely terrified. Talk about imposter syndrome. I didn't think I belonged in society because of what had happened. And having had a traumatic brain injury and then this immunodeficiency and the ECT, I honestly thought it was like shame. Like there was no scarlet letter A. That's why I was wearing all black. I don't know. It's deep and it's dark and it's ugly, but it was like I didn't deserve to live. And so it was very symbolic, taking off all the black clothes, daring to sign that lease for the small practice. I was like, let me just help a few people. If I made $1,000 a month on top of my 927 disability, then that would be life-changing for us. And maybe I could help a few people, right? I was so scared, though, that if they knew what I had gone through, no one would want to see me. And I just thought, God, if I could help a few people know that there is help out there and learn a little bit about their body, then maybe they won't ever have to go through what I went through, right? That's why I was doing it. So I signed a lease for an office space that was $700 a month. Remember, only $927 a month and that Social Security disability check. And I was so scared. And I got to be honest, a lot of people never get off of disability because that's what's paying for all your medical care, which clearly I needed. At the time, just one of the treatments was $720,000 a year. Right? Like, ugh. And so a lot of people don't try to get off of it because then it's like, oh, you're going to lose all these things. But I was like, I got to try. I got to try to live again. So I signed that. And then after I'd signed that lease and I was starting my very first month, I was like, please, I'm not religious, but I was like, please, dear God, let me make $700 a month and cover this lease so my kiddo and I don't become homeless. That's really what I was hoping for. I made $3,000 that first month. Hallelujah. Oh, I'm getting shaky. I feel weird. It's like, it's hard to go back to this time period. Like my hand's literally shaking. It was just really, really scary. The next month I made less, but I still made it. I still covered the rent. And same with the next month. And then it started to grow. And right when it was, really starting to grow a bit, was the same time I found out my mom was selling the house. I had to move out, and I was growing enough that I had an opportunity to get a better space. And so I had to pay to get this better space, and it was $14,000. And I had $15,000 left. That was it. No credit, no credit cards, no investors, no one else to bail me out. Out of everything I'd done in my whole life to that point, that was the last bit of cash I had under the bed, my protection to be able to provide for my kid. And I took that leap of faith. I had to sign a lease to go live in a new space. We had to get out of the house. It was $1,300 a month. So now I have to pay extra. That's where we were going to live. And then the new lease went from $700 to $1,450 a month. I can feel my heart beating still thinking about that. And then I pilled out $14,000. That was it. I had $1,000 left. That's it. Buy groceries, the whole thing. And that's what I paid to get in that new space. So everything was riding on it. There was no failure. Failure was not an option. Otherwise, I truly did not know what we were going to do. So the space Nikita and I moved into, it's an expensive area, San Francisco Bay Area. So even finding a space for $1,300 a month to live in was like amazing. Now let me describe this space. It was about 400 to 450 square feet. And this was before tiny homes were chic and had like their own Netflix show. Okay. And it didn't look like that. Like, first of all, it was just an empty room. What had happened was they'd taken a garage and converted it. So it was an empty space. And I was like going to Craigslist and driving in wealthy neighborhoods to see what kind of furniture people left on the side of the road, whatever. That's how I got couch. I mean, just, you know, a little gross when you think about it. But, and Nikita and I were in bunk beds. I had a like full size bed on the bottom and she had a loft twin bed over the top. And I have this really cute picture of her and our little dog looking at me from on the top of the bed. And I said, well, I'm training you for college. I mean, I was trying to make the best of it, right? Like our kitchen, our bathroom, our closet, our living room, our dining room, and our bedroom were all in the same, 20 by 20 feet. That's what was going on. If that wasn't enough, this converted garage was on a miniature pony rescue ranch. Well, that sounds joyful until, have you met horse people? Now, if you're a horse person, bless you, but we're not. And my kid is an indoor cat. And we had no idea what we were getting into. So all of a sudden now we're living on this ranch. I feel like it's a little generous to call it a ranch. It was like the square footage of just a normal house. But here's what was shoved in that little square foot plot. The owner, the landlord, had her house. We had this converted garage. There were almost 30 miniature ponies that had been rescued with all their various medical issues, 3 big horses in stables, a couple baby goats, a bunch of cats, like 5 dogs, 3 parrots, and then like bats and mice. Just not down for that. I'm just not a ranchy person. And if Nikita would feed, well, let me back up for a second. It was supposed to be if Nikita would take out the trash once a week, we would get $150 off a month in rent. We needed every penny. So I was like, you're doing that. Once we got there, the woman's like, well, actually, I'd like her to feed the ponies every morning. Okay, maybe that's fine. I mean, it just so like grew into way more. And Nikita's young. She's like, 14 or 15 maybe at this time. She's young. And like I said, she's an indoor cat. She's not into this stuff. And now she's like mucking out horse stalls and feeding like this special hay or grain or green alfalfa. I don't even know what you feed them, right? I was busy trying to run a clinic and hold it all together for us and figure out how to meet these obligations because we were out of change. Oh God. Just the stress of thinking about it. It just seriously makes me hot. If you're wondering how cortisol can impact your body, you're watching it live in action right now. And then the woman who owned it left for 2 weeks. And Nikita was responsible for these 20-some miniature horses, all the 3 big dogs, the goats, the big horses, the 5 dogs, the goats, the parrots, the whole thing. Oh my God, it was crazy town. But we pulled it off. We showed up. The new office was a hit. I was working hard. It led to me having to figure out better systems because I was like, I can't keep working this hard. I'm a single mama too, right? And I did. I figured out new systems quick. But as we grew and we were in that new space and we were desperate for money, there was a time period where I was working like 7 days a week. It was hard. So I did that for a short amount of time as quickly as possible, got it wrangled. So everything was working out well. And that first year, did about 240, 250 in cash, no investors, no loans, no credit cards, just doing the work. And that clinic grew from 4 walls to 22 walls. And eventually from me being a solo practitioner to multidisciplinary, won awards, best in the area, the building of something very real. And then during this time period, the only time Nikita and I weren't apart was 1 week that she would go spend with her dad at the beach. And one of my staff members, was also a friend, had been bugging me. You should go on a date. You should go on a date, which I did not care. I'd already been a single mom for 15 years at this point. I wasn't interested in dating. My plate was full. Like, I was managing my health well. The clinic was growing. We were living in this, small, crazy little place, but it was like finally, there was a little bit of hope. It was still very fragile and still very new. But I said, okay, fine. When Nikita's gone for that week, she got me to go online on a dating app. I was so not into this. I posted pictures without makeup, told the truth about, the life I was living at that time. The only person who was remotely interested was David. He and I messaged. We agreed to meet. It was just sort of like checking it off a box. I put within a 5-mile radius. I know anyone is trying to find love. Like, you got to stretch. I'm like, no, he's got to be within 5 miles. I don't want to drive anywhere. And so I was still in scrubs. I'd come from the clinic. This was downtown Walnut Creek. It was his only day off. He was working hard at a factory, long 12-hour days, 15 hours with commuting, 6 days a week. He rode his bike, and he was checking off a box too. He was coming out of a divorce, and it was just like, okay, I can say I've done it. And man, we just connected. I don't know what it was. We met at Press Juicery, those of you who know downtown Walnut Creek. And we walked around, and we kissed at the end. And then we just ended up making out like teenagers. I'm like, what is wrong with us? I'm like, this is weird. This doesn't happen. He had the same feeling. He got lost for 2 hours riding his bike back home. I was calling my staff member, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what just happened. And the next day he came over after work, and then he just kept coming over, and we were together every day since. And I do have to say, like, it was wild to meet him in that time period. It was unexpected. I wasn't looking for it. He was starting over in life. I was starting over in life. We didn't necessarily have a lot to offer each other. And falling in love and trusting that was one of the bravest things I ever did, was risking falling in love again, because the previous experience was not great. It's not great at all. But thank goodness for David. And we got off that ranch. There were mice. I can't handle mice. I remember hearing the mice in the middle of the night, and Nikita's like on her bunk bed. She's laughing hysterically. I'm holding a baseball bat, standing on a couch. And there might've been a little screaming. Yeah, it was mice. What could you do? I mean, there's like animal feed right next door. There's not going to not be mice, but I had to get off of there. And so we did. And the three of us ended up moving in together, and we got a 2-story townhouse in a bad part of a different town. And we thought we had made it. We thought we had made it. Oh my gosh. A 2-story, couple bedrooms and a couple bathrooms. I mean, really, we were moving on up, right? And we did continue to keep moving on up. We worked hard, and we expanded the clinic and gave it our all. I was always learning, always studying. I had a decade of doing I didn't read a book. I didn't read a single fun book, and I loved to read. All I did was read research. I studied all the time. I read research all the time because I was taking care of people and seeing more and more complex cases. And that was sort of how I started teaching them. And David was the one who encouraged me to go to IFM, Institute for Functional Medicine. I was like, why? Why am I going to go? I'm already doing it. And he's like, at that time, it was the gold standard. And he's like, you should just go do it. And so I did. I was like, God, this costs a lot of money that we don't have, and it takes time. But I did it all in about a year. All the classes, the case review, passed the certification, did the whole thing. definitely glad I was already practicing when I did that. And it was fun. I liked it. It was pricey. So I got fully certified. It's up there. Didn't teach how to like do things in actual practice, but it taught a lot of cool things. Didn't teach anything about the business. And that was sort of how I ended up teaching other practitioners. I mean, I had experience before doing that, branding, marketing, consulting, sales, speaking. But here I was teaching functional medicine. And part of it started is because when I went through the program, it was very heavily MD/DO, some nurse practitioners, but very, very medical. And so I met these other people in it, and they were great because it was so cool. They had gone through all the traditional medicine, and some were, incredible specialists or surgeons in their field, and they often had their own experience, sort of similar to why we're doing Diagnose This. They had their own experience and with their own colleagues, and no one could figure out what was wrong with them. So it wasn't my scary, crazy experience, but something that had happened to them. They didn't get the answers they needed, and that's how they found functional medicine. That's why they were there. And so I loved that. It was really neat to meet them in that venue. But then they got out, and we, all got certified, and they were failing in their functional medicine practices. I was like, why? You have all the keys to the castle. Why am I succeeding and you're not succeeding, right? You should be. On paper, you look better. You do. It's true. Use everything you can that's true to market, and I would go to you. So why do you not have any patients, right? So that's how I started teaching them. So I was teaching them the practical aspect of functional medicine, how you actually do it in your clinic so it works and you help people. And then how do you actually build a business? So that was sort of how that started. So at this point, we're getting to 2020, and my clinic's running like clockwork. It's doing great. It's awesome. I only have to be there maybe 2.5 days a week. And so I have all this time to work on these other projects. So I'm starting to work on a lab software that I want to build for practitioners. I'm starting to work on the training program and helping people. And then COVID happens. We didn't see that coming, did we? Right? And I'm in California. So when California shut down, the rest of the country thought California was nuts. They just did. They were like, what the hell are you doing? Well, the only person I know, there might be others out there, but the only one I know who shut down before California is, even my mom, entrepreneur for 50 years, was like, why are you doing this? Why don't you wait and see what happens? I think you're doing it too early. And I was like, nah, I've been watching around the world and I could see what was coming. I mean, not that far in advance. I shut down like a week before California. But I said to her, I can see it's going to get weird for a while. And what I had, there's still a lot of money insecurity, even though we were doing great. Like I'm having to restart in life. I'm in my 40s, and everything I built before it, like it's all gone. And I'm still dealing with a primary immunodeficiency. Everything's friggin' fragile, right? That's just the truth. So, I had a really good relationship with my landlord. I always paid in advance. I always took really good care of the place. And I just told him what was going on. He let me out of the lease amicably. We prettied it up, made it all great, so we'd be able to turn around and rent it to someone else. Everything was great. And that saved me like $60,000. And then a week later, it was like 7 to 10 days later, California shut down. Well, guess what all my friends could not do 2 weeks after I did it? Get out of a lease. So it was a good call that I did it, even though it was hard. I loved my clinic. All we needed were chips and guacamole, and it looked like a little Mexican restaurant. Like it was living room furniture, beautiful art on the walls, lovely people, twinkle lights in there. I mean, people just loved hanging out there. It was a great space. And there was just so much healing that happened in the different rooms there. But I did. I made the decision, and overnight like that, we went 100% virtual. And then California did too, a week later. Now, my clinic was not running like clockwork after that. I had staff in all different places. I had patients. Like everyone was freaking out in their own unique, different ways. And I, as the business owner, had to hold it together for everyone. And it was hard. Because I had made some of those tough decisions, I was able to keep everyone employed, and keep it going, but it was hard. And I found myself working like 12, 15 hours a day. It felt like I was keeping a business running while trying to start a new one. It was rough. And then, of course, I went through menopause. I used to teach women for years the best way to prep and go through menopause. And then the irony of this, right? And I was in really good shape for it before. Like, be at a healthy weight, have your stress balanced, have some good blood sugar management, good sleep, be moving. I was doing all those things. If it had come 6 months earlier or a couple years later, I would have been fine. But no, it was the worst time to hit. So that convergence of menopause and COVID, I gained like 70 pounds. Oh, it was just awful. And it was really, really stressful. And I just hung in there and took care of everything the best I could. Plus, the clinic was taking so much extra time from me. But I still had these other projects going that I had to show up and deliver for them. It was a wild time period. So I held it all together for a while, years. And then at 49, the same year, I was going to turn 50, I had a health issue because I had a hard time. I had a hard time with the lockdown. I had a hard time with menopause. I was having a hard time with my infusions for the immunodeficiency. I was starting to get sick a lot and sick and sick and sick. That's what happens when you have this. I was sick. And you think, oh, sick, it's not that big of a deal. People get sick all the time. Well, when I decided to move, I had 1 to 4 infections every day for 7 months. So I had a lot of medical people in my life at that time. It was rough. And it wasn't like 7 months in California and then I decided to move. No, I was right in the middle of it and I decided to move. I had to sort of finish that time period and then finally got a little break in the infections. But yeah, it was just sort of a wake up call. It was around end of summer, August-ish, something like that. And I had already planned, I was taking a month off from the clinic in October 2022. Yeah, 2022. I was really excited for that month off. I was ready. It was a lot of hard work. I was ready for a break. And I was going to Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I'd never been there before. I'd been to a couple other places. I really liked it, but I'd never been to Playa del Carmen. And so I was going for a month. David was going to be able to be on vacation with me for a couple of weeks, but not the whole time. And I had friends coming and things like that. And so I'm dealing with all this health stuff. And I just have this feeling, I mean, the truth is I had sort of a near-death episode, which I've had way too many of them. But this was, I was struggling. Again, I couldn't get doctors to look at everything that was going on. I was seeing every specialist. It wasn't as bad as before, but I was what felt like a downslide versus headed up. And a medicine they had prescribed me dropped my blood pressure to like 60 over 40. It was just a hot mess. And it was really, really scary. David and a friend had to help, and then, get me to ER. But apparently I told them like I saw the light and I was walking upstairs. I don't remember telling them that, but I remember seeing it because I know I think it traumatized both of them, to be honest. It must have been really scary because I was fine afterwards, but a couple days later, I remember David sort of getting teary-eyed and saying to me, you felt fragile. Like, are you going to be okay? Because I saw the light and these stairs. And I just looked at him and I just said, listen, David, I remember that. I saw the light and I saw the stairs and I started to walk on them. And I said, these are shit stairs. They're made of wood. We need to retile these. We need to make it better. And then I walked back down the friggin' stairs and I made him laugh. But that was true. That was a true story. I was like, it's okay. But I just had this feeling like if I just stayed in this scenario, it wasn't going to be great. It wasn't going to be great. And everyone thinks California's sun, but the falls and winters are pretty overcast. And with the head traumas I've had in the past, I get seasonal affect disorder really bad. And I was like, I don't know. We were just hanging out in the living room. Nikita was in her final year of college at Northeastern Mills in the Bay Area, and she would come home and visit us on the weekends. So it was a weekend when she was there, and everyone's hanging out, doing their own thing. And I just said, guys, I'm thinking when I go to Mexico, I'm just going to stay there. How do you feel about that? And bless them both going, well, okay. And we talked about it, and they were supportive. And with 5 weeks before that trip, because I left on October 1st, and this was the last week of August, decided to make it a move. So sold everything we had in the house. Nikita was already living in a dorm at college, so she would just go visit grandma on weekends if she wanted to visit someone. David was going to stay at work a little bit longer, but then he was planning on coming and joining me. And so at 49, 2 months before I turned 50, I moved to another country. And I took that break and set up house there, which it was just good to have a break. It was just good to shrug my shoulders for a little bit, because I'd been carrying so much stress. And then I made the decision to release the clinic, which I did. And that was hard, and I cried, but I just needed some space. And I was teaching other practitioners, but small. It was the mentorship 1.0. It was a small group, and I was taking care of them. But other than that, I just needed a little break, sort of lived like I was on a cruise for a few months. I found pina coladas. I don't drink alcohol, so I just get it without alcohol. That didn't help with the weight loss, being in a new country. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm in the land of chocolate and coconut and guacamole and pina coladas. But boy, we had a good time. And then, and I turned 50. I was still dealing with the sickness all the time, but I don't know. Like I said, we all have baggage. I'm just going to choose where I want to carry mine. And I was chasing the sun and aquamarine water. And the funny thing is that my mom said, God, your sense of timing, because that winter was the worst winter they'd ever had. They had an atmospheric river and a cyclone bomb. Never even heard those terms before. What the heck was that? Well, that's what was happening in the Bay Area when I was sipping piñatas, the alcoholic-free version, in Playa del Carmen in Riviera Maya, in tourist lands. It was great. I loved it. And for a while, it was just me and Emmy, the dog, navigating it and figuring it all out. And then David came and joined me, and that was wonderful, and I was loving it. I made about $7,000 in February, which was fine for where we were at, but it was a lower cost of living, like 1/10 to 1/4 of the housing expenses that I had been paying before. And with all this like rebuilding and starting over, I hadn't owned a house in like 20 years. Just barely starting a retirement account, just this amount of cut. It was just still very fresh and very fragile, right? And I just released the clinic. And so I was like, I got to do something. I'm still feeling that pressure. My daughter's in her last year of college. She's going to graduate. She's decided she's going to move with us after she graduates. Yay, wonderful. But David left his job, and now we're in this other country. So what are we going to do? So $7,000 a month in February 2023. So I remember I was walking in the pool. Some people were in the snow. David's family, they were in the snow in northern Minnesota in February. And I'm walking in the pool in the sun. I'm like, I got to figure this out. I got to do something. And so I decided to do a launch, teach, give value, get some more people in the mentorship. And then I was going to do, in my mind, a bigger launch. So without investors, from a foreign country I just moved to, getting my first break from an infection. After 7 months, I got a 3-week break before I got another infection. I was like glorious 3 weeks. I started this program, and went bigger to be able to help practitioners and teach them how to do this to help patients. And I hit $700,000 a month by August 2023. That's 100x. Some people out there are like the 10x people. That was 100x from 7,000 a month in February to 700,000 by August. And I hadn't fathomed that number before. And then a couple months later, I hit a million a month. And a couple of months after that, less than a year later, I hit 1.2 million, which is 170x in less than a year from a foreign country on a laptop, 70 pounds overweight, still sick, still with an immunodeficiency, still doing weekly infusions. Oh, it was challenging, but it was also great to be doing something different. And it was just me then. And then I hired my first person and my second person and my third person. They're still with me today. Oh, man. And then the number that matters the most to me, it's not a revenue number, but right now we have 51. I think we actually just hired our 52nd person. And those are real people. I couldn't do this without them, right? I have this vision of what I'm building, and now 52 people are on board with me across 10 different countries, this incredible staff. And we've built a really robust, we are the gold standard now for clinical education, certification. We have all the major accreditation comparable to anyone else out there. I pay for CMEs and CEs for our practitioners. We've built clinical tools that have never existed before for people. Absolutely incredible. Just, coming from that patient perspective of wanting help, and then that practitioner perspective of not wanting to miss anything and what's really going on, and let's ask why. So we have an incredible clinical division, an amazing team, but we also have a coaching division and marketing and sales and advertising and software and health coach staffing. And it's been a lot. We've been busy. And like I said, I couldn't do it without them. But the real vision is what I'm doing here. Even though, like I said, some of these stories I was going to take to the grave, I never planned on telling them. And I'm only telling you because of where we want to go with Diagnose This. Listen, shooting healthcare insurance CEOs in the street is not the answer. It ruins two families. It freaks everyone out. It doesn't make the change that we want, but change is needed. Change is needed. And who am I to go in there and try and change it? I've been told before, you don't belong here. You don't have the right license, or you don't have the right history, or you're a woman. Women can't operate at this level. I've been told all those things and much more. So who am I to go ahead and try and change it? And I just really thought about it. And it's like, yeah, it needs to be changed. And I still use traditional medicine all the time. Don't get me wrong. And there's a lot of people doing heroic work there. But the system itself, there's a problem. There's a problem, and it has to be solved. And I really feel like the best way for me to have an impact is to go straight to the patients, to go straight to the public. I have to teach them what they need to know to help themselves, to advocate for themselves, and to have better practitioner visits. And so that's what Diagnose This is about. And we're doing all this work and working so hard. We don't have investors or funding, so we're paying for this. I could be retiring. I've worked my butt off. I could be retiring, but I'm not retiring. And I know it's a huge risk, and I know it's crazy and it's nuts, but I don't care. I'm doing it anyway because of what I've been through, and because of what you might be going through. And someone has to fight for you. I didn't have anyone fighting for me. This is what I needed. And so my team knows this. I talk to them about it the regular. We want to build something that's really going to make a difference for the public and change how we look at our bodies and our health, and really end medical gaslighting. And maybe someday, if we build something that we could even sell, like maybe a technology we could sell, or a portion of the business we could sell, everyone on the team is going to win. That's my pledge. I looked it up later. People don't really do that. I don't know why. There's a few stories, some neat people, and they gave some money to everyone. I think that's good, but I'm doing more than that. To me, that just seems normal. Why wouldn't you do that, right? I couldn't do this without them. So we've got people all over the US and UK and Philippines, Colombia, Argentina, Pakistan, India, Spain, Bulgaria. And yeah, they're all involved and they all really give a damn. So if we win, they all win. And that's the plan. So $927 a month. That is where this started. Not with capital, not with investors, not with anything that looked like an advantage. With a body that was failing, a child who needed me, and a decision that the alternative was not acceptable. The system told me I was disabled. I was living it. I got it, but I didn't want to keep living as a patient. So I built something anyway. Not because I was exceptional, but because the woman who I was building for, like myself, has been sick, dismissed, alone, and deserved to have someone build it for her, deserved to have a voice, deserved to have someone listen to her and say, you're not crazy. It's not in your head. There's an answer. We have to go find it. And I really felt like I understood what she needed. And I wanted her to have the support I didn't have. Episode 10 is next. This is the one where I finally tell you what Diagnose This is, what it does, how it's structured, and why something like this has never been built before. So do all those podcasty things. Subscribe, like, share, calendar it, hang out with me. Come back for more. I don't want you to miss an episode. So the next one is called So I Am Fixing It Myself. And I'm going to tell that story just for you. Episode 10, I'm going to finally tell you what Diagnose This actually is and why I built it, despite a medical system that absolutely gaslit me and made me sicker than they made me well, because I don't want it to happen to you. So I'm going to tell you all the behind the scenes secrets. Let's go.